Welcome back to this Real America's Voice news break. I'm Terrence Bates. President Trump is set to hold bilateral talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin here in the next couple of hours. The two are meeting in Anchorage, Alaska for an anticipated face-to-face to discuss a ceasefire and potentially an end to the war between Russia and Ukraine. The word cautious optimism is being used to describe the substance of what potentially could come out of today's meeting. Real America's Voice Chief White House correspondent Brian Glenn already on the ground in Anchorage, even in advance of President Trump's arrival.
If he sits down, and he'll know in the first 2 minutes whether or not Putin thinks that he will agree to a deal, they could go forward. But he said, look, if we get in this meeting and we feel like it's just a bust, that we're not going to have any progress made from it, I think he is prepared to just throw down the cards and say we're out. And I think the American people, Grant, and the viewers would agree with me, they would be in support of that, because it's being involved in this war, the funding over, the hundreds of billions of dollars that U.S. taxpayers have paid so far in this war is not a popular thing. And I think we need some type of conclusion to it. Obviously, the president wants peace.
We'll have live coverage throughout the day from Alaska. Brian Glenn, as I said, is on the ground already, and we'll be checking in with him throughout the day. Meantime, the Trump administration's takeover of policing in the nation's capital continues to ratchet up. On Thursday, Attorney General Pam Bondi named the head of the Drug Enforcement Agency as the Metropolitan Police Department's Emergency Police Commissioner. In essence, Terry Cole is now also running the D.C. Police Department, meaning any orders passed down from leadership first have to be approved by Commissioner Cole. Of course, as you can imagine, there's significant pushback from city leaders there in Washington, D.C. Meantime, the administration says more than 1,650 people are now participating in the law enforcement operation to better secure Washington, D.C. That number includes National Guardsmen. However, the Guardsmen are only able to temporarily detain people and don't have arrest power. That's a quick check of your headlines. I'm Terrence Bates.
Reset stops here. The Charlie Kirk Show.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. We have an amazing guest in just a second here with the Bitcoin.com studio. I want to remind you guys that we're able to go very viral about what we're able to do on TikTok. Billions and billions of views. In fact, let's watch this video that's going viral on TikTok. Let's play cut 17. This was one of my debates at Oxford. Play cut 17.
In Britain today, 30 people a day are arrested for offensive posts on social media, according to The Telegraph. Praying silently within 600 feet of an abortion clinic can get you arrested in Scotland, as a 74-year-old woman named Rose just learned weeks ago. Members of Parliament scold British citizens for thinking they have the right to say that they do not have the right to say things that offend Muslims.
That speech can be found on TikTok and many other places. Go to TikTokeconomicimpact.com. Behind the stats are stories that really matter, like Arizona.co-king, able to employ 28 people and pay them well, thanks to the foot traffic TikTok brings in. Or Sheen Mechanic in Georgia, who expanded her auto shop and hired new employees with the support she found on TikTok. Go to TikTokeconomicimpact.com. That is TikTokeconomicimpact.com. Portions of our program are sponsored in part by TikTok. Joining us now, super excited for this conversation, Edward Kovacic, who is the chairman and CEO of the Prayer Operating Group, and we've been talking about his stuff for a while. It's oilfacts.com. Edward, great to see you. So much to discuss. Thank you for joining the program. You are an energy truth teller. First, let's just talk geopolitical, and then we'll go a little bit more specific. What are the stakes of America and Russia meeting today? Russia being one of the biggest producers of petroleum on the planet. Please, Edward, welcome to the program and walk us through the geopolitical stakes of what's happening today.
First of all, Charlie, it's great to be with you. I'm a huge fan, and what you do is just so important. If anyone is not aware of this, oil, fossil fuels basically drive the entire global economy and as a result drive geopolitics. Russia is really a petro state, an extractive state whose primary line of business is producing oil and minerals, and essentially an influential member of OPEC+. So, to President Trump's credit, he's been really eagle-eyed on keeping oil prices low to manage real costs for everyday Americans. And that's why I think you've seen the White House be a little bit light-handed on really exerting maximum pressure on Russia. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with respect to these negotiations and if President Trump really uses that final, trump card, so to speak, against Russia geopolitically with respect to Ukraine, because President Trump has really hesitated up until now to do that.
Has global demand for fossil fuels or petroleum gone up or down in the last 5 years?
So just to set the record straight, demand for energy and specifically fossil fuels has gone up every year since the beginning of the implementation of fossil fuels. If you go back to the early 20th century and look at sort of the world pre-fossil fuels up till today, you'll see pretty much a straight line up and to the right linearly with demand growth every year. The only stutters in that growth have been the 07-08 credit crisis, and then we saw demand bounce right back thereafter. And then we saw another pause in demand growth during COVID when we were all forced to stay in our homes for over a year. And then you saw demand growth come right back. And so, that's really no mystery, since even with all the talk about renewable energy, as it's called, replacing fossil fuels still account for 60% of electricity generation in this country, a greater share in most other countries, and really are part of everything that we use in our daily lives. Everything that surrounds us in our daily lives is made from fossil fuels.
Yeah, and so I asked for a reason because we were told 10 years ago that there's going to be a green energy push and that we're going to divest ourselves from fossil fuels. How's that working? We were told that we had peak oil, and that we're going to have solar panels and windmills, and it was this very utopian vision. What's the truth?
Well, the truth is that there is no energy transition. There's only energy addition. Nearly half the world is still energy poor and consume about the amount of energy that your refrigerator does on a per capita basis for an entire family. So most of the world is trying to pull themselves out of, energy starvation. And, in that same period of time, as we've seen demand for oil grow linearly since the early 1900s, we've also seen people live a lot longer as a result of all the things that fossil fuels have enabled. We've also seen tremendous prosperity and record numbers of people coming out of poverty. I think global poverty is now down from about 42% in 1980 to less than 10% today. And so this whole idea that we can transition from fossil fuels to solar and wind for our primary source of energy is really just foolish and a lie, because solar and wind are extremely inefficient, extremely low energy dense, and completely uneconomic. And were it not for extreme government subsidies up to date, we probably see much less solar and wind actually developed around the world.
And you can learn more about this at oilfacts.com. I'm actually on the website right now. It's oilfacts.com. And you have this amazing thing, 10 energy truths in the age of AI. So there have been several predictions made by the kind of climate core. Would you say this is a decivilizational movement, the environmentalist? Is that the undercurrent? Is that the reason they have such gusto?
Absolutely. If you just go through a logical progression of facts here, cutting off energy supply to create energy scarcity is a path towards starvation, not towards promoting human flourishing. And that's really, the only logical outcome, particularly in a time where we're seeing real stress in the West on electrical grids as a result of AI-driven data center growth that's projected to double between now and 2030. really on a grid in this country that dates back, on average to the 1970s. It's really arcane and needs a tremendous amount of investment. And so with this aging grid, limited distribution capability, AI data centers are going to hog all incremental power supplied to the grid, which is really going to leave Americans left out in the cold, and could lead to a scenario where we see energy rationing in this country, which again leads to poverty, because we know for a fact that access to abundant and affordable energy is the number one variable correlated to both human longevity and prosperity.
Yeah, and so the decivilizational component is incredibly important. Everyone could check it out at oilfacts.com. But so we are all marveling at artificial intelligence. We're marveling at what it can do. I mean, some of us are a little terrified, to be honest. But to connect the dots, why does energy and fossil fuels, why is that a key ingredient with the AI revolution? You can't have one without the other.
Well, for one, it's as simple as AI data centers use a tremendous amount of power. Training one single AI model uses as much energy as electricity we need to supply 100 homes in a year. So it's just a staggering amount of electrical demand. So this whole lie, which is simply what it is, that climate change is induced by the use of fossil fuels, and as a result, we need to curb fossil fuel use and thereby create scarcity in energy in general, goes against the whole narrative of empowering our society with AI, because AI is going to require every ounce of electrons we can possibly spare to power these data centers. So the sad irony is that people have been led to believe this lie because I think people genuinely want to be virtuous. They want to do right. They want to do good by the environment. They want to do good to each other. I believe in the human spirit. And that human spirit has been turned against itself, ironically, by buying into this lie, because buying into it will lead to, human poverty and really worse outcomes.
Yeah, and so let's talk about some of those lies. And in particular, one of them, they will say that the constant production of fossil fuels is bad for the environment. You touched on that. What is the truth here? That there was that ridiculous movie Frack Nation, I think that's what it was called. And it was like, oh, my drinking water now has, petroleum in it. What is the truth here?
So, as you recall, they started by calling it global warming. They rebranded it to be climate change. But ironically, far more people have died in history because of extreme cold than extreme heat. Now that we have a scientifically honest administration in the White House, and Chris Wright is doing a yeoman's job as energy secretary to expose real science behind climate. There is no proven correlation between fossil fuel use and climate change. There's actually no correlation between global CO2 and climate change when looking back at climate for 200 million years. So I think that historically, you've had groups that have used bad science, very small data sets, really bad sampling to make a political point, because it sure as heck is not a scientific point.
Yeah, and so can you just build that out really quick? 1 minute remaining. So tell us more about the evidence we have for the last 200 million years. How do we know that, what you just said? Because that's a contention that's thrown at me all the time on college campuses.
Well, we have great geological data that is exemplifying, the nature of the atmosphere for that period of time. And, in times of high CO2 concentration in the atmosphere, the planet's gone through sort of a tropicalization period. And we're kind of seeing that now, which leads to more abundant food supply, actually a greening of the planet, And so all of this is evidenced in the geologic history. It's really pretty indisputable.
Stay right there. Edward Kovacic from oilfacts.com. Everyone write it down, oilfacts.com. Stay right there. Okay, I want to tell you guys about Patriot Mobile. Patriot Mobile, they're great partners of this program. I like Glenn a lot. He's a great person. And you guys have a ton of choices for cell phone service with new ones popping up all the time. But here's the truth. There's only one that boldly stands in the gap for every American that believes that freedom is worth fighting for. If you're worried about coverage, don't be. Patriot Mobile uses all 3 major U.S. networks. If you have service in this country today, you'll have good or better coverage with Patriot Mobile. If you think switching is a hassle, it's not. Keep your number, keep your phone. Go to patriotmobile.com/Charlie. That is patriotmobile.com/Charlie. And use promo code Charlie and get a free month of service. Switch today. That is patriotmobile.com/Charlie. The good news is you can switch to Patriot Mobile today without sacrificing quality or service. Again, they're really great. Make the switch away from woke wireless to a Patriot Mobile service provider that shares your values. No longer fund the bad guys. Take out your phone right now. And if you have a phone, right now, you have to admit that if you do not have Patriot Mobile, you are writing a check to the bad guys. So make the switch to the other side. Switch to the other side. Go to patriotmobile.com/Charlie. That is patriotmobile.com/Charlie. Email us as always, freedom@charliekirk.com. Subscribe to our podcast. We'll be right back. And go to oilfacts.com.